Hi, my name is Ross Gilliland. I'm the Associate Director for Strategic Partnerships at Third Sector Intelligence, also known as 3SI. And I'm here to talk about the CUSP Public Child Population Dashboard. I'll explain to you in just a moment what CUSP is and how that relates to CUSP Public. So we're going to start by getting into sort of the context for this tool and the broader capability that it's being drawn from. Then I'm going to walk you through sort of what's in the tool itself, and we'll do a live demo of it. And then lastly, talk about sort of our plans for ongoing development of the tool. So past, present, and future for CUSP Public. In terms of the context for the tool, it's being drawn from a larger capability, or simply known as CUSP or CUSP Enterprise. CUSP stands for the Child Universal Success Platform. That is 3SI's ECIDS solution, and ECIDS is an early childhood integrated data system. So 3SI has built an ECIDS solution, CUSP, which it operates as a software as a service platform, and out of that, we have carved out a component of CUSP that can be made entirely with public data. The Gates Foundation, based in Seattle, has funded this work, sort of a carve out, which we're describing as a public good, because we're going to make it freely available to the public. Importantly, I should note that this tool also is leveraging some foundational work that the Administration for Children and Families, ACF, has performed, working with states, exploring what the uses and needs would be for a tool such as this. And so we've incorporated some of that work as we develop CUSP Public. I should also note that CUSP, the full ECIDS solution, currently is used in 5 states, comprising about 20% of the child population ages 0 to 5. So it's a model that's out in the world being used every day. And we also have done some additional ECIDS preparation work for 2 states that you'll see listed there, and have done other early childhood work in maybe about 15 additional states. All of this is information that we've brought to bear in development of CUSP. Okay, so there's definitely not time to get into the details of the methodology of the CUSP ECIDS solution, but suffice to say it's complex. There are many stages to it. I am going to sort of tell you at a very high level how the arc of that methodology works and where CUSP Public fits into it. So you'll see this full arrow. We start by first modeling the entire child population. We do this based on public data sources, including census data. And then we integrate that with information, administrative data, information on child care providers, children served, things like that. And so that's what most people think of when they think of an ECIDS. They think of that administrative data being sort of merged and deduplicated. We precede all of that by modeling the full child population. And the full CUSP implementation will ultimately result in a minimum viable product that would be called maybe a CUSP beta, just to sort of demonstrate value for the ECIDS. And then that's something that we continuously enhance. And I mentioned that just because, again, as we operate CUSP as a software as a service solution, when we make those enhancements, we push those out to the implementing states. And in this case, CUSP Public will also be improved over time as we enhance the software. So again, that first piece of the puzzle in terms of modeling the entire child population, you can see highlighted in blue. What can you do with just with that data, public data? So there are 2 use cases that have been prioritized based on the states that 3SI has worked with, and also based on ACF's engagement with states. The first is to establish a quality denominator to understand program uptake. And what we mean by that is, if you were to administer a program and you know how many kids you're serving, you also might want to know how many kids you could or should serve. So that would be the full population that's eligible for that program. That's what we mean by the denominator. So using just public information, we're not really able to say anything about the overall saturation of these services. We're just saying how many kids are out there that could be eligible for these services. And the second use case is to model scenarios based on adjustments to program eligibility criteria. And so as you'll see, we've built the tool to be able to sort of explore the incremental changes to populations across the state, given some of these adjustments to different criteria. Okay, now to talk about CUSP Public and what's actually in the tool, and before we show it to you. So CUSP Public focuses on several child and family characteristics, and you'll see them listed at the top of the slide: child age, household income, both as a percentage of the federal poverty level and the state median income, parent labor force participation, and lastly, the child residential location. CUSP Public aggregates kids to the county level, but just note that the full CUSP model can be aggregated to really any other geographic unit. So there's a few things I want to say. First of all, we've selected these particular dimensions quite intentionally because they are the most common predictors of programmatic eligibility in the early childhood space. We know that there are many other characteristics that are important for decision making. The methodology of our model is, and the data sources that go into it will sort of allow us to model some of these that we've prioritized here, but not everything that we would like to include in an ideal world. So we've had to make some hard choices and prioritize these data elements. Another thing I'll point out is that the publicly available data sources, like census data, make a lot of these information available, but not intersected with one another. So for instance, it's very easy to see household income as a percentage of federal poverty level from census data. You can also see parent labor force participation, but you cannot see, at least not easily, the intersection between the two of those. And so that's something that CUSP is doing. We are modeling the interaction between all of these terms that you see at the top of the slide. There are additional information that we would like to include based on state input in a tool like this. And so even if we can't model them all concurrently at the child level together, we have included child race and ethnicity data. So you'll see that as an example that's included in this presentation as a sort of analytical overlay with other CUSP data. The dashboard has three main pages. Child population and program eligibility are both getting at that first use case around equality denominator. The child population is just segmenting the population by these main dimensions of age, household income, and parent work status. Program eligibility is taking that same population information and then mapping that to program eligibility requirements. So saying, if we know this about a kid, which programs do we think they would be eligible for then? And then lastly, scenario analysis tab, which is going to be directly related to that second use case around scenario modeling. The dashboard also is going to feature data download so that people can just download the raw data supporting the dashboard if they just want to use it themselves, as well as documentation on the methodology, data sources, and a data dictionary. Here is the CUSP Public dashboard. You can see at the top, we're in the dashboard view. We could download data, view documentation as needed. I'm going to focus down here on the actual content. So you can see the three tabs that I mentioned. There's child population, program eligibility, and scenario analysis. We're in the population tab right now. And so you can see the full child population right now. It's showing children ages 0 to 12 across the whole nation. There's multiple years of data in the dashboard. So right now, going back to 2016, pretty soon we'll be loading 2022 census data as it's available to us. I'm going to pick a state, though, because looking at the full nation is still a pretty high level. So if I zoom in on, in this case, Georgia, and I'm going to go and drill down to the county view, and you can see all the counties within Georgia here, and the same information is showing in terms of the total population with each county. But we can subset the population. So in this case, I might want to say only look at kids under 6. So I can select those age groups. And in Georgia, if I wanted to say model the subsidy childcare eligibility, I would do that by looking at children within the labor force that are, parents who are in the labor force from households that are below 50% the state median income. So then this would be modeling subsidy childcare eligibility. Another an aspect of a use case for this tool that I think is compelling to states is we can drill down even further than just looking at the eligibility for any one program. In this case, if we wanted to say look at the segment of children that are eligible for state subsidy childcare but ineligible for another program, say like Head Start, we could approximate that by filtering out the kids that are below 100% the federal poverty level. So by filtering them out, we're really concentrating on that segment of the population that's subsidy eligible for whom Head Start is not an option. So again, that's just an example of how we can use this. We can intersect any of these dimensions of federal poverty level, state median income, labor force participation, or age groups, however someone sees fit. There's additional information at the bottom, which I don't think will take a lot of time to look at, but we can slice and dice and look at this information of the income distribution given the selections we've made. In this case, intersected with age groups, we can see how they change over time as well. Okay, so now we'll move on to the program eligibility tab. Once again, it's sort of the same information, but based on what we know about the programmatic eligibility in Georgia, in this case including subsidy childcare, we can map these kids to that program. We've included federal programs like Head Start and Early Head Start. So you can see the total child population for this age selection shown here at the right. And then there's a breakdown where we can see the population eligible for subsidy, Early Head Start, and Head Start. Now we know that some kids might be eligible for multiple programs, right? And so we've deduplicated that basically, and to get a distinct count of these kids that would be eligible for any of these funded programs, we can see that represented here. And if we want to see then the kids that are conversely eligible for none of the included programs, that would be featured here. If we wanted to see a more targeted intersection of program eligibility, that's included at the bottom of the page. We can see, say, for example, within CCDF funded childcare, the full funded population, the full eligible population for CCDF. We can see how many of them are eligible for only CCDF versus CCDF and Head Start or Early Head Start, that type of thing. So again, just facilitating kind of a way of visualizing the full population, segmenting that population according to the program or programs that population is eligible for. I will also note that two things. One of them is that currently, this is a pre-public alpha of the tool. We've only included subsidy childcare and Head Start programs in the tool for now, but down the road we might include other programs that are feasible to include in a tool with a national scope. Something like public pre-K programs is a good example of something that we would hope to include in the future. And once again, we know that program eligibility requirements are complex. There's not really going to be possible to highlight them, all of the dimensions that could lead to program eligibility. So we're using sort of the broadest strokes that are feasible in terms of the dimensions we've prioritized for this model. Okay, then the last tab is the scenario analysis tab. So once again, this tab is in response to state desire to see what would happen if incremental changes are made to program eligibility requirements, and what's the delta, what's the resultant change, and how does that play out across the state. So right now I've loaded in sort of the status quo as our baseline scenario. That's the total population eligible for subsidy as it stands right now in Georgia, under 50% SMI. And if we wanted to explore what that looked like up to 60, or, I mean, this is all hypothetical anyway, so we'll just say up to 75% SMI, we can see what that delta looks like county to county. So you can see them sort of rank ordered here in terms of the total impact to the total population in that county. We can also look at the percent change if we wanted to see that. This is a significantly ambitious scenario, so you see a huge change. We can see this play out in a map as well. And then if we wanted to see also how this, like, what do we know about the counties where we see these big changes, and how is this impacting different populations and communities? Is it proportionately impacting some populations more than others? We can start to get at that by adding in this layer of race and ethnicity. So again, this is data that's brought in. It's not modeled concurrently with all of the other CUSP data, but we can overlay it for analytical purposes at the county level. So what we're doing here, and I just selected Black and African American, although this is multi-select, so a state could choose any categories of race or ethnicity they wanted to. But for now, having made that selection, we can see some interesting information here about the total impact of this scenario. So the county level impact is shown in the y-axis as a percent change in overall eligible population. The x-axis is saying within each of these counties, what percentage of the county's population is Black or African American. And so again, if you saw a significant sort of slant to this, sort of like a bias in one way or the other in this distribution, that would be telling you that you're going to have a disproportionate impact on certain populations given that proposed or hypothetical scenario. Now, that may be a good thing or a bad thing, but either way, we want decision makers to just have that information when they're making these decisions. And there could be outliers too, so you'll see some really significant percentage changes here. The size of these dots correspond to the total child population, so they're pretty small counties. All the really big ones are kind of more in this 50-ish% change. So anyway, that's just an example of the type of analysis that we could do, kind of layering in additional child or family characteristics or population level data to just sort of learn more about what the impact of different modeled scenarios are going to look like relative to these dimensions. Okay, now to talk about the ongoing development and next steps for the CUSP Public tool. So it's a work in progress. Everything you've seen is a pre-public alpha of the tool. And we're continuing to flesh out some of the documentation right now on margin of error and some of the underlying census data that feeds into the tool. We're building out the functionality for a sort of raw data download, because as an analytical person myself, I will acknowledge that it's nice to just have the data and be able to use it however one sees fit. So we're going to make that available to users as well. And we have other sort of like a laundry list of enhancements that we're making based on some early input that we've gotten from states and other state stakeholders that we've been sharing the tool with. So there will be additional changes forthcoming. In terms of where we are in the development process, we've completed some of these early rounds of state input. So we had a webinar shared with many states, convened and facilitated by EC DataWorks. We've been having sort of individual state discussions in the months of December and January to sort of collect their feedback. And now we're in this final stage of ongoing development, and we'll be launching CUSP Public, the beta of CUSP Public towards the end of Q1 of 2024. Just want to say, we're very, very excited about this tool, and anytime anyone ever wants to talk about the tool with us, we will be excited to do it with you. So please don't be shy and feel free to reach out to us if you'd like to talk about this tool. We'd love to hear your ideas about how it could be useful, how to improve the tool, and everything in between those two. So again, my name is Ross Gilliland. I'm the Associate Director of the Strategic Partnerships at 3SI. Will McCoy is our Director. You can see our emails there. And you can also find out more about 3SI generally at our website, team3si.com, and on LinkedIn.